Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pitatvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakhatvameva Tvameva Vidyadravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mamadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are doing the Panchadashi, now 8th chapter. 8th chapter is Kutastha Deepam, that is the Kutastha Chaitanyam, which is also called Sakshi Chaitanyam. And Deepam is, it is talking about the consciousness aspect of it. So this, from the chapter of 6 to 10 are dealing with the Deepa Prakaranam, that is on the Chit aspect of it. Up to first 5 chapters, the discussion is on the Sat aspect. Now we are doing the Chit aspect, and from the 11th to 15, the discussion will be mostly centered on the Ananda aspect. So we are doing the 8th chapter. 8th chapter, you see, is very technical because we are talking about epistemological issues, how the knowledge takes place, and how Advaita Vedanta adopts sometime to some degree the Mimamsa position. And here we are talking about the nature of the reality and how the knowledge takes place. Who am I, Jiva? All these things have been clear, have to be clear. It says, who is a knower in this process? We'll chant mantra 7 again, so verse 7 again, and go a little bit deeper before we proceed again. Ajñāto brahmana bhyasaha Ajñāto brahmana bhyasaha Jnātah kumbhas tathanakam Jnātastumbha tathanakim Jnātatvajanane naiva Jnātatvajanane naiva Chidabhasa parikshayaha Chidabhasa parikshayaha. Together. Ajñāto brahmano bhyasaha Jnātah kumbhas tatanakim Jnātatvajanane naiva Chidabhasa parikshayaha. So here it says Ajñātaha kumbha and brahmana bhyasaha. So here we are talking about the original consciousness, which is Kutastha Chaitanyam, and the reflected consciousness, which is Chidabhasa. So the whole chapter is trying to distinguish what is the Kutastha Chaitanyam and what is Chidabhasa, and how to differentiate it, and because they are occurring together all the time. And he takes an example of the general illumination by the all-pervading consciousness, and that which arises as though the sunlight is falling uniformly on the wall. And Chidabhasa is a particular or magnified the spotlight due to reflection of the sunlight by the mirrors. Now we have to be clear here. This is, there is a general light on the wall, and now there is a spotlights. Spotlights are different, and the general light is also there. On top of it there is a spotlight. So wherever there is a spotlight, there are 2 lights. One is the general light, and now on top of it there is a spotlight. So this has to be shukri. That is, there is a Brahma Chaitanyam, which is Sakshi Chaitanyam, which is there as a general light on the wall. Picturized as a general light on the wall. Then Chidabhasa is a reflected consciousness coming from the reflections in the example from the mirrors, and now on top of it, it's falling there. So there is the Chidabhasa is superimposed on top of the general light or the Brahma Chaitanyam. So before the reflection of the mirror, there is a general light is there. Now that is picturized. Now how do we explain the Chidabhasa and the the general Kutastha Chaitanyam, as long as there is a Jiva notion is there, Jiva notion is what? I am equal to this. That comes from the Chidabhasa only. That he is going to talk more detailed in the later verses where I am notion is due to Chidabhasa. So Chidabhasa is there wherever I have a Jiva notion. Jiva notion is there all the time. So Chidabhasa is there all the time in principle, but here we are talking about the magnified, the times where Chidabhasa is prominent. So prominent are the conditions where Chidabhasa is expressing prominently over and above the Samanyam, and whenever I am localized and expressing myself, as long as I think I am a Jiva, it is the Chidabhasa only. And the knowledge takes place because of Chidabhasa. Why? From the point of Brahman, from the point of Kutastha Chaitanyam, or from the point of Sakshi Chaitanyam, no knowledge really can take place. Why? Because it is infinite. It is that which is all pervading. From its point there is no objects even to know. So there is nothing other than Ekameva Advitiyam Brahma. So that general light itself cannot even be recognized unless there is a reflecting medium. So here you have to be careful in terms of when you use this particular chapter. Vidyaranya is adopting something that for explanation, but we have to be clear in terms of our understanding wise what's the role of Chidabhasa and what's the role of the Kutastha Chaitanyam, which is same as Sakshi Chaitanyam. What are the roles? Chidabhasa is there as long as the mind is there. So this has to be clear. So as long as the mind is there, Chidabhasa will be there. Chidabhasa means reflected consciousness. So mind by itself is inert. So there is no life in the mind as it is. So therefore, wherever there is a life, that means Chidabhasa is there. So when you say Chidabhasa is not there, so you have to be specific in terms of what he is referring to and what exactly from the total point. So he is referring to from particular thoughts where Chidabhasa is getting magnified or glorified or intensified. So otherwise Chidabhasa will be there as long as there is a life. Even for a Jivan Mukta. Even if Ishvara takes form of a Avatara Purusha, there has to be Chidabhasa, because even Avatara Purusha is alive and is localized compared to that which is beyond. So Krishna is localized compared to Pandavas and Duryodanas and all that. So all these things need to be very clear. Then only there will be otherwise confusion in the literature. That's why you need the methodology of teaching, or a Sampradayic methodology of teaching also is required in order to understand. If you read the book directly, it becomes confusing only because this Chidabhasa is being used in this book, in this particular chapter, with reference to intensified the reflections of a particular, of any objective vrittis, for analysis of the knowing of this object, that object, and so on. So number one, Chidabhasa is there all the time as long as the mind is there. Mind is there as long as the Jiva is there. Jiva is there as long as the mind is there. Until the mind, BMI, evolves and dissolves itself into the totality as a Hiranyagarbha, and that happens only during Moksha. Until then, a Jiva will be going from one loka to other loka to other loka. So death is not a separation or dissolution of the mind. Mind, along with the Antakarana, along with the sense of faculty of the knowledge and the faculty of action, all pranas together as a package, it leaves the gross material body, and therefore that is what is called death. So natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nachaiva abhavishyamaha. So when Krishna says about I am not, there was never a time, I was not there, never a time you were not there, we are still differentiating I, you, other kings and so on and so forth. Which means that their Chidabhasas are there and their minds are there. So that's what is called the notion of a Jiva. Notion of a Jiva comes when I take Chidabhasa as I am, ignoring the general light or consciousness that is. So we have to have clear understanding that first the pure consciousness is Satchidanandam. That's what we did in the last chapter also. Pure consciousness is Satchidanandam. So wherever there is a subtle body, that pure consciousness gets reflected because the subtle body has a capacity to reflect. So as long as the mind is there, subtle body is there, there is a life. And you cannot avoid it because even death is not a separation of subtle, the subtle body is not a death is not a destruction of the subtle body. The only subtle body is traveling. That's called the transmigration of a soul, we call it. So the people call it as a soul, but soul has to be understood here. Soul is the Chidabhasa along with the reflecting medium. So reflecting medium has to be there to reflect. So therefore the mind has to be there to reflect. And the reflection makes the mind, because this reflection of the consciousness makes the mind alive. Essentially now the mind appears as though a conscious entity. Why? Because it's reflecting. So just as we said, the moon is as though appearing as a luminous entity in the sky because it's reflecting what? Reflecting the sunlight. If there is no sunlight, then moon will not be luminous. It will be dark because there is nothing to illuminate. So moon by itself is inert. In the same way, mind is itself is inert. And here is going to talk about the thought is also inert. But it is inert, but it is different from the body. Body is also inert. The mind is also inert. So what's the difference? Difference is body is a gross material, comes after Panchikaranam and all that we discussed in the first few chapters of the Panchadashi, where there is a grossification of a gross matter. And whereas the mind, Antahkaranam, is made up of subtle matter, and that subtle matter has the properties of that reflecting the consciousness. The gross body can only reflect the Sat aspect of it. So we use the example of light with the 7 colors, and when we say something is a red color or a blue color or a violet color, all it means is that is becoming a red color, another object is blue color, only because the white light, which consists of all the 7 colors falling on it, and that red object absorbing all other colors except red, therefore it looks red to me because all other colors are absorbed. It's not reflecting the other colors, it's only reflecting the red color, therefore it looks red. The other object looks blue because it's reflecting the blue color and all other colors are being absorbed. Same way, the inert objects are reflecting only the existent part, and therefore they look only inert because the consciousness is not getting reflected, because the gross material cannot reflect the consciousness. Therefore they are called inert. Dead matter. Even the body is also, that's why when the body, when the Antahkaranam, the mind leaves away, then the body, it doesn't have life and it will be just there. Body is, and that's what is converted into ash, and therefore one gets rid of because there is no life anymore. And the subtle material has the capacity to reflect both the existence and consciousness, and therefore it's wherever there is a subtle body, then that one has to be alive. So when the subtle body entered upavishati, entered into the gross material, then the gross material is also activated, and therefore when I say he is alive, she is alive, and so on, that means in that gross body there is a subtle material or subtle body which we call it a jiva. And that jiva is essentially involves, number one, pure consciousness, which where the reflection, because of the subtle antakarana, the subtle body reflecting the pure consciousness by the chidabhasa, and therefore there is a reflecting medium, there is a reflection which is called chidabhasa, and the original light which has to fall on it in order to get reflection. So they have original light, original consciousness, we call it OC, original consciousness, and we have a reflecting medium which is the mind, and therefore reflection occurs as long as the medium is there and the general light is there. That means general light is, which is Sakshyam, which is the same as Kutastha Chaitanyam with reference to localized there, but it is infinite Sachidanandam. And that is always there because that is eternal. So that light is, general light is always there, and the reflection therefore will occur as long as there is the subtle body is there. And the subtle body is localized because it has the mind is finite, and the finite mind will only reflect that. So if you look at the sky on a full moon night, you have a moon shining, and you have a Mars, you have a Venus, and so on and so forth. So they are all looking at it. There are so many things of shining objects, but all shining because of only one, that is sunlight. Sunlight falling on the moon, and we see the moon as a luminous entity. Sunlight falling on the same sunlight falling, not same means not same particular area, but general sunlight that is falling on the Venus, we see the Venus is a luminous entity. Same way Mars, etc., all the planets which they do not have the luminosity by themselves have become a luminous entity by reflecting sunlight. Same way, by reflecting the consciousness, that is the all-pervading consciousness, the local subtle bodies as though become a luminous entity, as though became a conscious entity, and because they are residing in the body also get activated through the subtle body that's coming. Therefore the body has become so dynamic. I'm able to fold, I'm able to talk, I'm able to hear. All this because of both the mind and the gross body is also there. If the mind leaves away, then the gross body is not there, then there is no capacity. The gross body doesn't have a capacity to listen, neither the subtle body also do not have the capacity to listen, because it needs a gross material in order to express. At least it needs a body to express, because in the deep sleep state, in the dream state also, the subtle body is there for a jiva, where there is a localized jiva, as though I entered into my own creation as a subject in my own dream, and there they have a body, and there is a little mind in that jiva, and also all the senses working, because I could see dream world and I can run away, so my karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, everything is working. Because for a dreamer it's not a dream as long as I am in the dream. In the same way, in the waking state also there is a consciousness being reflected. So we have number one, the original consciousness which is eternal. Number two, we have a reflecting medium. Reflecting medium is the mind, antakaranam. Mind means buddhi, mind. Therefore, the buddhi is nischayatmikam, mind samsayatmikam, and the ahankara, the ego, and chittam, which is essentially the memory. All are subtle, and depending upon the functionality, we are differentiating into four parts. They're all thought process. Now look at this. We have a mind as though a pool where the general reflection is occurring. Now in that general reflection, which is mind is there as long as there is general reflection. If the mind is calm and quiet or serene or inactive, let me call it inactive, then there is only general light. reflected by the mind, where there are no thoughts. So thoughtless mind is not the absence of the mind, it's only absence of the thoughts. So we have to be careful here. Thoughtless mind is required for realization of the totality. There is no mind. It's not that there is no mind. If there is no mind, then there is no life itself. The mind has to be there. So you go beyond the mind. The mind is dead or something like that. People use the word Manasantu kim argane krute naiva manasam arga arjavat. This is a sloka from Upadeshisara by Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, and it says, if you inquire what is the mind, then mind is no more there. If the mind is no more there, person becomes a dead. So what Bhagavan implies means there are no thoughts in the mind. Thoughtless mind is still a thoughtless mind. And thoughtless mind without knowledge is the ignorant, thoughtless mind. So that is not a realized state unless that thoughtless mind has the knowledge also. How does knowledge occur? We'll come back into that. In fact, he's going to talk about it anyway. So thoughtless state is not self-realization. So you have to be careful here. Thoughtless state is what you need. You need a quiet mind to recognize. When you have a quiet mind, there is a general reflection of Sachi. But to recognize the Sachi, I need a thought. So I have to be careful here. So there is a general mind where without, if there is no thoughts, a quiet mind or a mind which is you can call it a folded mind. Folded means there is no more thoughts. Can happen under several conditions. That's what he's going to talk a little bit. But if you understand it, then we can apply that as we go along. So we went through this, but we have to make sure. I want to make sure that these concepts are clear. Otherwise, there will be a lot of confusion with the words. So, in the case of a pure mind, when it is calm and quiet, without any thoughts, by yoga, by Patanjali Yoga, say, I can make the mind thoughtless. Thoughtless mind is a mind which is quiet and calm. And there is only the reflection, that means there is a OC, original consciousness, there is a still reflecting medium now which is quiet, and there is a reflection, because reflection is there whenever there is a mind. If you have no mind, they said is a dead. So there is no Jiva even, there is no life itself. And that will not happen even if the body dies. When the mind disappears? Only after self-realization. So one has to be careful here. So thoughtless mind is still a mind. So there is no place, no time where mind is absent. So one is consciousness will be reflecting in the thoughtless mind. This happens when by yoga I can make the mind calm and quiet. Also when the mind becomes calm and quiet every day, that everybody can do without yoga, that is when I go to deep sleep state. So there also the mind is calm and quiet. They call it folded mind. Folded means no more agitations and quiet. And that's also where pure Sachi is reflecting. Now also this can happen when somebody is having a unconscious state or moksha. It's the same as the deep sleep state in a way. And there also the mind is calm and quiet. And in the case of momentarily when is happy, also in those moments there is a calm and quiet. When it is calm and quiet, the reflection of not only the Sat and Chit, but Ananda also gets reflected. Therefore, one is happy in that state, in the sense of there are no agitations in the mind. It's a reflected happiness only, which is different from the Jnani's happiness, where this is which is in the Ananda scale is the highest one, and Sotriyasya Akamaya Tasya. So the one who is Shrotriya, who has become understood the nature of it, he also has the highest happiness, and that happiness is due to Swarupa Lakshanam. Because his nature, I understood that I am nature of happiness itself, or fullness. Now Let's go back to this teaching. One is all-pervading consciousness. Another one is the reflecting medium, is always there for a jiva. And there is a reflection always occurs. So there is the original consciousness, OC, reflecting medium, RM, and there is a reflected consciousness, RC. This language is actually coming from the Swami Paramarthananda's the discourses where he uses OC, RM and RC. Since it's convenient, we can use that, which is essentially original consciousness, which is Sakshi, which is the same as Kutastha Chaitanyam. Now we said the mind is localized, because my mind is different from your mind, is different from other mind, but consciousness is all infinite. It's not localized because it's infinite. So, but that part of the consciousness that is falling on the local mind, particular in my mind, is Sakshi. In your mind, that is your Sakshi. In his mind, you can call it a Sakshi, even though there is no divisions in the total consciousness. So Sakshi is the word, and this was discussed in the 6th chapter of the Panchadashi, where he talks about 4 kinds of consciousness. It is Ghatakasa, Jalakasa, Megakasa and Mahakasha. These are all statements in order to account for it. So Sakshi is same as the original consciousness, same as the Kutastha Chaitanyam in this chapter. So the Kutastha Chaitanyam, the Sakshi is that part of consciousness that falling on this local reflecting medium, local mind, we call it a Sakshi. That part of the consciousness falling on your local on your mind is called a Sakshi for you, and for you, for other person, that is a Sakshi. Even though the OC means original consciousness is infinite. Just as that part of sunlight falling on the moon is only illumining that moon, and that part of the sunlight falling on the Venus is illumining the Venus, and that part of the sunlight falling on the Mars is illumining the Mars, even though sunlight is uniform across and there are no distinctions in the sunlight. Also, if you look at sunlight problem, which we mentioned before, is in between the moon and the in the Mars or the Venus. Also there is a sunlight, but I don't see it because there is no reflecting medium. So we have to be careful. The consciousness is all pervading. Even though consciousness is all pervading, we see local entities only are exhibiting consciousness. In between, the space is there too, and space also is consciousness is there, because wherever anything, consciousness is infinite, it cannot be separated. But space cannot reflect, space being inert cannot reflect consciousness. Therefore I don't see any life in between me and you. So that is what one has to be careful, because people ask, consciousness is everywhere, how come only here the world is inert and I am only conscious entity? All these things need to be clear, and this will become clear if one understands Vedanta in a correct perspective. So here we are talking about the local mind and the local reflection and consciousness. Now is applying this to an object awareness. So how does an object, we mentioned that when I see a pot, so how do I see a pot? You see, there is a pot there. How do I see? You see, because I can see. So seeing is a means of knowledge called pramana. So pramana has to operate. The pot is there and I am there and I am closing my eyes, then I don't see a pot. Why? Because I am not opening my eyes. So eyesight is a means of knowledge to see a pot. And even if I am seeing and looking at the pot, my mind is somewhere else, then I don't see. Even though a lot of people are there listening, their mind will be somewhere else, dreaming something else, and they don't see what they are talking about. So my attention was somewhere, that means mind was somewhere. So out of mind, out of sight. Therefore the mind, the eyes have to be there, eyes have to be open, and the mind behind the eyes also have to be there. So what is happen in the process? We discussed the mind according to Vedanta, the mind along with the senses grasps the object, Grasping the object is nothing but forming a vritti, a thought in the mind. Vritti is of the nature of the mind, which is subtle. So vritti is also subtle. The mind is also subtle. So look at this way. I have the mind, now I have the vritti in the mind. Vritti of what? Vritti, contents of the vritti is nothing but attributes of the object, because the senses also along with that. So with the senses are not functioning, then I cannot see the object. If my eyesight is not functioning, then I cannot see the pot through the eyes and color of the eyes. So to see the color, I need the eyes. I may be able to touch it and make a form for it, but I won't know the colors. So Varnam includes both the color and the form there, Rupam. Rupam includes both the color and the form that can be seen by the eyes only. Ears cannot see and eyes cannot hear. So each one, the field of operation of each sense is fixed. And if that sense field is not functioning in that particular sense, then I lose the ability to see or ability to hear and so on and so forth. And when the senses grasp the object forms a vritti, the vritti is as though formed, and just as the mind is the subtle material is inert by itself, so is the vritti. And that's what he's referring to, is without the consciousness reflecting on the mind, there is no life. Without the consciousness reflecting on the vritti, there is no reflection or there is no knowledge of the vritti. So Chidabhasa, here he is referring to, even though the mind is also reflecting, and without the reflection the person is dead. So therefore Chidabhasa is reflecting, but here we are focusing that part of Chidabhasa that is illumining the thought. So we have to say, when he says there is no Chidabhasa, it's not that there is no Chidabhasa, there is no Jiva itself. So Jiva is there, Chidabhasa is there, that means reflection occurs. There is a general reflection is there, and also the Kutastha Chaitanyam, the original reflection also there. Original consciousness has to be there all the time. So OC is there, and RM is there, reflecting medium, and RC. In the RM now I have a thought becomes a RM now. Then I have a magnified Chidabhasa due to reflection of a local thought, which is nothing but the contents of the pot or chair or an object. So now we have to be careful. So what is that? For me to know that there is a pot out there, my senses have to form a vritti within the mind. Senses bring the information depending upon my sense capacity. If I am color blind, then I cannot, the vritti will have will be different, the contents of the vritti will be different from what it is there. So what it is there, not necessarily I see only based on my sense input. So sense input have to bring in information and forms a vritti in the mind. And the vritti is illumined by the consciousness, and that gets reflected, and that's called Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa is, here he is calling that as a Chidabhasa because it is a magnified Chidabhasa by the vritti. Now if you look at the sloka 6 and 7, sloka 6 says Chidabhasanta dhivrittihi jnanam lohanta kuntavatu jadyam ajnanam etabhyam vyapta kumbod vidochyute. So Chidabhasanta dhivrittihi, Chidabhasanta dhivrittihi. So when there is a pot, and if there is no Chidabhasa, means there is no reflection of vritti forming. If it's just a vritti without reflection, then there is no knowledge yet. Vritti is just a modification of the mind. It's called vritti. The change of state of the mind, we call it a vritti. Vritti is a thought here. So thought of an object and contents of the thought or the attributes of the object. attributes of the object is akara, ghatakara. That's what he said. The ghatakara means the shape of the pot is what is the contents of the vritti. Shape includes the rupa includes the colors also. So shape and the color of that what eyes can only see. So that forms the contents of the vritti. So when the consciousness falling on that, consciousness is everywhere, so it illumines the whole thought. So it's as though the thought is in the consciousness. So when the consciousness, because consciousness is everywhere, when the thought rises in the mind, the whole mind along with the thought is in the consciousness, original consciousness, which he calls a Sakshi, Kutastha Chaitanyam. But on top of it, there is a reflection by the thought, and that is magnified as though, and that he is calling it here as a Chidabhasa for knowledge to take place. So Chidabhasanta Dhivrittihi. So the knowledge of the dhivritti jnanam lohanta kuntavatu. So when the knowledge occurs by the Chidabhasa, that is called jnanam. That means when the consciousness gets reflected and floods the whole vritti, whole thought, and the thought is nothing but the pot thought, therefore the jnanam of the pot arises there. That is the contents of the vritti, and they say this is pot, this is chair. That pot is related to the vritti. So vritti of the pot is different from vritti of the chair, even though it is a modification, but the modification, the contents of the vritti is different for a pot compared to different of that. And according to this, it only collects the attributes of the object. So because of the matter is outside, the physical matter is outside, it doesn't catch the whole pot. It only is taking the reflected attributes of the object only, because attributes also belong to the object. So the shape of the pot remains with the pot. So what comes to me through the senses is only reflected shape, and that's what is the Vedantic way of explanation of the formation of the thought and knowledge of the pot. But along with it, we said simultaneously and spontaneously that this, I know this is a pot, a knowership or ownership of the knowledge that this is, I am a knower of, this is a known. I am a knower. I'm a knower is another concept that arises spontaneously in the mind. When I make a statement, I am a knower, that is a thought process expressing through the mouth. But without thought process also, I know I am a knower. Only I am expressing that yes, I am a knower. But without that also, I am a knower. That knowledge, knower comes automatically when there is a known. So as long as there is a knowledge occurring, that is a pramana is operating because of opening eyes, there is a prameyam and pramana, and pramata comes automatically, spontaneously, and under what? It is not a separate vritti. If it is a separate vritti, again Chidabhasa comes into picture there. So Chidabhasa is not required, it is occurring in the general pool as though Kutastha Chaitanyam is illumining that. Why we say Kutastha Chaitanyam is illumining? It's not a special reflection in the form of a vritti. It is a result that comes as soon as the Chidabhasa is revealed. This is a pot. It's already a phalam is there. Phalam is a recognition of the knowledge that there is an object with that attributes. There is a fruit of the process. Pramana means there is a result. Prama has occurred. Therefore, Prama means knowledge. This is a pot. And also, I am a knower of the pot. Means I know this is a pot. I know this is a chair. So that called ownership coming from the background. And we said if it's another thought, then we have a problem of anavastha dosha. Why? Because then how does that thought will know? Then you need another thought, another pramata, so it keeps on going. So therefore there is no need, and that's not the way it occurs also. It occurs spontaneously that I am a knower of the pot. So therefore, when the thought rises, that knowledge of this is a pot arises automatically or spontaneously that I am a knower of this pot. And therefore, I have what he calls it as jnanatvam. Jnatatvam. Jnatatvam means knowerness. Knowerness arises spontaneously in the Kutastha Chaitanyam by reflection in the general pool. Kutastha, the figuratively called Kutastha Chaitanyam is illumining that, but the knowledge is only in the background of the mind by the general reflection occurring, and that's what is essentially general wall I know. So all these things have to be clear here. I have a pot there, and the pot knowledge occurs by the formation of a vritti, and that is the phalam, fruit of the pramana, and that's called phalavyapti, vritti vyapti and phalavyapti. Phalam is there is a fruit that this is a pot, and this I know this is a pot knowledge also arises spontaneously, and that is due to Brahma Chaitanyam. It's because there is no separate vritti. And in the Vedanta Paribhasha, what he says is the subject I am joins with the object, and for me to be conscious of the existence of the object. We go into how Vedanta Paribhasha analyzes and how the science analyzes, so that we know exactly how and where they differ and where the merge also. We need to know it. That we will come back and explain it again in the next talk. We stop here. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.